So I just woke up and this is going to be a recording from bed. Okay, so what was on my mind to put in a certain recording? Actually quite some deep topic. Okay, a topic that actually needs some clarity. It needs to be exposed correctly. It needs to be described correctly. I mean, so I don't know if I will ever post this recording because I don't know if it will come out as clearly as I feel it's needed. But let's see. So the topic is um, understanding how our perception works and understanding what creates the perception of this reality, and then how can we, by understanding how our perception works, understanding how we can actually truly serve this experience that happens as a projection within our perception. Uh, Before saying anything, I feel to say, like with almost all the videos and recordings that I make, that this reality here is a projection. The reality that we perceive with our five senses and with even with our inner senses like thoughts and emotions is a sort of projection of the mind. Um, it's a projection similar to how one goes to the cinema and sees a movie on a screen, and that movie is projected from a source of light that passes through a movie film and projects that movie film on the screen. And this is similar to how this reality appears before our senses. It is projected by a source of energy or a source of light that passes through a movie film and is projected, but not on a screen, the screen being our entire awareness. Um, Awareness is the screen on to which this world is projected. Um, Now, what is awareness? Awareness is our own the property, the capacity to notice, to observe things that exist. So, for example, when I'm seeing my hand, I am being aware that there is a hand. When a thought comes into my head, I am aware that a thought has appeared and exists. So, when an emotion comes, I am aware that an emotion has penetrated my feeling body. So, awareness is that which is aware of the things that exist prior to the things existing. It's just a sort of unmoved or permanently still space of just awareness and beingness, which has no intent to see a thing or another thing, which is completely neutral. And because it is so neutral, so um, accepting, so open to anything that could appear, it can see anything that can appear. If this space of awareness would have the slightest preference, then nothing else, paradoxically, could be seen. Not only that preference. If it sounds paradoxical, but imagine that you would have the preference to only eat red apples all your life, and you only see, because you have this preference, let's say, to only perceive red apples, you see red apples everywhere in everything. Instead of seeing your hand, you see a red apple. Instead of seeing the sky, you see a red apple. So if your awareness would have a preference to see anything, it would see red apples everywhere, but because it would see them everywhere, there would not be any distinction between anything else. So the sky would be a red apple, your hand would be a red apple, it would just be so many red apples that it would become senseless, unperceivable, because you would not be aware of what you're seeing. So paradoxically, if awareness would have any preference, then paradoxically it wouldn't be able to perceive anything at all, because that preference would become everything, and because of that it would become nothing at all, it would become unperceivable. It's similar to how you can take a word, like let's say apple, and you can repeat it many times, and you say like apple, 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 until you see that because you say it so many times, becomes this experience so overwhelming, so repeated, it loses the meaning of the word. You soon start to lose the meaning of the word. You don't understand the word anymore. It's like saying apple, 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 and just reduces to a sound, and the sound to a noise, and the noise to nothing. This is what it happens when an experience becomes overly prevalent. So this is what would happen if awareness would have a preference. It would, if awareness would only want to see a thing, then that thing would become so prevalent that it wouldn't actually see it anymore, because it would not make sense anymore. So awareness needs to always be neutral, completely devoid of any preference to see anything, in order to paradoxically see everything that is. So awareness is this neutral space of observation in which all other things appear. Physical sensations appear inside this neutral space of awareness. Thoughts appear, emotions appear, preferences appear, desires appear, intuitions appear, visions appear, images appear within our minds. Um, Compulsions appear, instincts appear, um, life events appear, and all of these things that appear also disappear. So they are like waves forming on an ocean. All these things that appear and then disappear. It's like a wave that grows and then melts away into the ocean. And the ocean itself is awareness. The ocean onto which all these forms appear like waves and then disappear back within the ocean. So this is awareness. This is the quality that there exists. From what I'm seeing, this quality exists in everything. So it's not specific to human beings. Everything arises from this ocean of awareness. That is to say that everything has awareness, in my opinion, and how I see it is that a chair has awareness, and uh, a tree has awareness, the sky has awareness, a thought has awareness, um, an emotion has awareness, an instinct has awareness. So, but all these things appear like beings on their own that, at their most underlying core, have or are the instance of this awareness. Um, Now, even all if all beings have this awareness, not all beings are conscious of this. So consciousness is something different than awareness. Consciousness is the level of knowledge, let's call it, of what one is. Consciousness is the level of knowledge of what that awareness is. So everyone and everything has awareness. Like a tree has awareness, A sky has awareness, a human has awareness, a object in the room has awareness, a laptop has awareness, everything has awareness, but not everything has consciousness, conscious awareness, I mean. Not everything has the conscious experience of what that awareness is. So actually, many forms are unconscious of what that awareness is. So you can have everything has awareness, but not everything has consciousness over what that awareness means. And this starts to come more and more close to what this human experience here is, and the entire cosmic experience here is. So from one perspective, we could say that this entire cosmic experience is about this cosmos itself becoming conscious of what that awareness means, that they all share. Becoming conscious of what awareness means. Becoming aware of oneself, of itself. So a tree might have awareness, but it might not be conscious of itself. It might not know what that awareness is. It might not even know that it has it, in a way. So now moving into the second part of this recording. It's like it's the one vital equation or formula or structure that we might need to understand. Pisi, dă-te jos. Dă-te jos, iubire. That we might need to understand if we are to actually truly understand how our perception works. What is this? What does it mean to experience reality? What does it mean to become conscious of oneself? To understand this awareness? So if we want to truly understand our human experience, there is this, we need to start from the base, basically. Like, personally, I always feel that if we ever would be able to understand our experience and to know how to navigate it as humans, we need to start from the most basic building blocks of reality. Like, we need to go as deep and we need to perforate, we need to um, pierce through the most deepest as we can go level of reality, the most fundamental level of reality. And once we understand the fundamental dynamics of how reality starts, how reality moves, then that fundamental formula, that fundamental equation, once we understood it, we can apply it to anything. Because if it works at the most fundamental level, it will work through fractalization, it will work at any other level as well. So, nu, Pisi, dă-te jos! Um, um, so, uh, if we go to the deepest, most fundamental level of reality, what I personally encounter is a level of reality or an instance of reality which I could only call it like a unified, undifferentiated reality or the reality of being. I heard this term, the unity of being, of the reality of being, and I loved it. Being used by this, mm, I think it was, I don't know where he was born, but it was an Arab thinker and mystic called Ibn Arabi. And I loved this term because I feel it so greatly describes this reality. So, at the most ground, fundamental level of reality, there seems to be this unified, natural reality of just being. Now, I don't want to go into how this reality, what this reality is, and I much more want to go in how the dynamics of how this reality creates this base underlying true real reality, this core reality, which is this reality of beingness, of being itself, or we could call it a natural reality. It's like a unified, true, real reality in which things exist in the real form. From this true real reality, similar to movies, dreams or virtual realities can be projected and experienced as, let's call it them, entertaining or learning experiences, or there can have many purposes for why one could project such realities, such virtual realities. And as we find ourselves currently in a projected virtual reality, let us understand how this projected virtual reality comes from that true real reality and what is the relationship with it, with the what is the relationship between this projected reality to that true natural reality. The idea is that the fundamental equation or formula or relation between the true natural reality where things exist in and of themselves without nothing creating them, where things are 100% real, solid, valid, and has existence on its own without being created by anything else, which is 100% true and real. And these virtual words, these relative words that come and go, that always shape and move and morph, and they appear and then they disappear. The relationship between the real reality and any other virtual reality, or let's simplify, the relationship between the real reality and the virtual reality, it starts, seems from what I've seen, to start from this most fundamental and basic formula, which is the formula of awareness itself. And the formula is this one. Um, when awareness is still, oh, basically, awareness can have two different modalities to it. It can be still and observant, or it can move. So awareness can be still or awareness can be in motion. These are the two main modalities of awareness. when awareness is still, what happens is that, okay, so let me put forth an analogy so we can better understand awareness. Awareness is like an ocean, a body of water. When awareness is still, the water is perfectly clear and one can see through it. It can see inside of the water, the contents existing in the water, and it can see outside of the water, the contents existing outside of the water. So if you're inside of the water, like a scuba diving, looking out, and the water is perfectly clear, you can see outside. And if you're outside of the water and you're looking inside the water, you can see inside the content. So each where you look, you see reality the way it is. When this ocean is perfectly still, not moving. So when awareness is perfectly still and not moving, we see reality the way it is. We see the natural reality in its natural, real, true form. But if awareness, this ocean, starts to move, it's what happens is that it starts waves start to be created on top of it. Now waves exist on top of it. And what happens is that these waves create disturbances in the field of awareness, in the field of this perception. And now, if you try to look from outside in, you don't see the contents existing within the ocean anymore. And if you try to look from inside out, you don't see the outside world anymore. So there is this barrier that is created between the in and the out. There is this separation that now starts to occur when awareness moves. And then when awareness moves, something new also appears to happen. The waves themselves, the waves themselves that carry the contents from within the ocean to the outside of the ocean for some time. So now, if you're outside looking in, you only see these contents of the ocean being pulled out from the ocean for some time on the surface of it, and then they melt back within the ocean. So this is the word of perception. The waves that are forming on the surface of the ocean is the word of perception, because now the two sides of the being, when awareness starts to move and the waves are formed on its ocean, the inside of this body of water gets separated from the outside of it, and these two sides of the being get separated from each other. And now you have an outside being and an inside being, and these two seem separated now because there is this middle filter of disturbances between them. They feel separated from one another. So now the outside observer, the outside being, can only see what happens in the inside by studying the contents of the ocean that arise on the surface of it. And it can study each wave. Oh, so this wave brought this yellow fish and this stone and this thing. Ah, okay, I'll record it. And this another wave brought this and this and this. So this is how the outside now can take notion of what happens in the inside, because it doesn't have clear vision on the inside anymore when the surface of the ocean is moving and has waves on it. And now the inside of the ocean feels almost completely segregated from the outside of the ocean too. And it can only touch the outside of the ocean by forming these waves, by the contents. For example, a little yellow fish that, let's say, exists inside of the ocean, it can only go to the surface by being pulled by one of these waves to the surface, and can see the outside of the ocean. Oh wow, it's like wow. And then it melts back in the ocean for some time. Again, I mean. So now the inside doesn't see the outside anymore, and the outside doesn't see inside anymore. And the two sides of the being are being separated. The in and the out are being separated. So The most fundamental formula of reality is this one. When awareness is still, our being is unified. The in and the out are merged together into one single being. There is no in and out when awareness is still. In stillness, the natural reality of the two unified beings is seen the way it is. But when awareness moves, these two beings, these two sides of the same being, start to separate from one another. They lose awareness of each other, and they now can interact with each other only through the middle field between them, which is perception. They can only perceive and touch themselves through these middle waves that are created. So when awareness is still, we see the reality the way it is. When awareness moves, we see a projected virtual version of that reality. When awareness is still, we are in the true natural reality of being. When awareness moves, we are in a dream, in a game, in a virtual reality where we play. We play with ourselves. And to play with ourselves, we need to first split ourselves in these two main sides of our beings, which makes the in side of our being and the outside of our being. And on the convergence, on the meeting place of these two now two different sides of our being meeting, is where the play starts to happen between them. So the two main instances of reality are these ones. One instance is the natural instance of reality that always is the same, nothing changes, it's permanently remaining the same. And the other instance of reality is the reality playing games with itself, inventing dreams, inventing illusions, just for entertainment in a way, or for just learning things. It doesn't need to necessarily be for entertainment purposes only. It can be for learning things, it can be for discovering things, or for understanding itself better, or different reasons. And when one being wants to fully live itself in the natural reality, it keeps its awareness still. Its awareness is fully immersed as itself in its own being, without moving, and then that being exists in the natural reality with no games, with no virtual reality, is nothing. But when that being wants to play games, it either it itself learns how to move its own awareness, which from what I'm seeing it's more rare. Not all beings appear to know how to move their awareness on their own. Or it can go to a certain device or a certain other being or a certain technology that moves their awareness for them, which I see this is much more common. So not all beings appear to know how to move their awareness on their own, and they need an outside, let's say, thing to move their awareness for them. And once their awareness is in motion, these two sides of their being starts to be split, and then they can experience their dreams and create games. And so some beings know how to move their awareness on their own. They know how to create a split on their own. But other beings need to go to an outside, let's say, not outside there, because there is no in and out there. It's just one single reality. But they need to, let's say, insert their awareness into a certain device, or it's a sort of like maybe a technology or something that moves their awareness, stirs their awareness for them. Now, let us understand the two key sides of the formula of how projected realities are projected. And this formula contains these two main sides of our being. If these two sides of our being, the in and the out, um, are merged together as one, as I said, awareness in that state of perfect unity is perfectly still. There is no awareness moving. There is no thing, no awareness hopping from this thing to that thing, to this object, to that object, to me, to there, them, to the tree, to the sky, to the. It's not like this. No, it's awareness is here in the center, let's say, but because it is here, it becomes everywhere. It's because it is unmoving, it loses, it stops being centered awareness, and it starts to occupy the entire body, and then it starts to occupy the entire reality, and then everything becomes visible, becomes aware. And you don't need to move your awareness because you're, in a way, it's like a bit like, I don't like the term saying you're everywhere. I just don't like saying this. But it's like everything is perfectly aware. uh, so that's when awareness is still. But if awareness similar to a quark, like if that quark starts to vibrate inside us, and awareness starts to vibrate, it starts to vibrate everywhere, not only inside of me or outside of me, it starts to vibrate, then the separation starts to happen between the in and the out. And now we can see an inside of me and an outside of me, because there is this awareness that starts to vibrate and creates those waves on the surface of the ocean, that now, because there are the waves there, you can't see inside the ocean nor from the ocean outside. So it starts to separate the reality into two main realities. And these two main realities are the inside reality, one, and the outside reality, two. Or another name for these two main realities, these two main realities have been called so many names. Like you can say the feminine reality, which is the inside, or you can say the masculine reality, which is the outside. You can say the in, which is the feminine, which is the inside, or the out, which is the yang. You can say dark and light. Dark is the female, the inside, and light, which is the outside. You can say unconscious and conscious. Unconscious is the female, the dark, the inside, and conscious is the light, the male, the outside. So you can you can call them in many names. You can say hot and cold, hot being the outside, cold being the inside. Um, you can say known and unknown, known being the outside and unknown being the inside. You can say the left and right hemispheres. Uh, Here it's a bit tricky with the left and right hemispheres because it can be mistaken a bit. But just the more crass, more bare experience, bare explanation could be said that the right hemisphere is the inside and the left hemisphere is the outside. But this can be interchangeable. Like I don't necessarily see them like this. There is so much complexity that I'm seeing with the right and left hemispheres. It's almost like each hemisphere, and I'm transgressing a bit, but I need to say it. It's like almost each brain hemispheres, the right brain hemisphere, the feminine one, contains a male and a female inside of it, and the left brain hemisphere contain a male and a female inside of it. So it's a bit more complex with the brain hemispheres. But just simply saying the right hemispheres could be associated with the dark, with the unknown, with the female, with the in, and the left hemispheres would be associated with the light, with the yang, with the male, with the known. So these are the two main poles of reality that split, that undergo a primordial split when awareness starts to move. So we need to understand that first and foremostly, it's awareness itself that starts to move, that starts to separate these two poles of our being into and makes them seem like they are two. But when awareness unifies, and when awareness steals itself, these two poles of our being come together and unify into one single reality, which is the reality of our being, of our true nature, of our unified natural being that exists in the natural, true, real reality. Now, let us understand how the projected realities come to be. Let us understand what makes a projected reality be a projected reality. What makes an illusion be an illusion and why? Now, so we understood that before anything happens, there is this unified natural true real reality, which is the ground for everything that exists, right? So we have this natural true real reality, unmovable, unchangeable, permanently the same. Um, from and this reality exists when awareness is still. From this natural true real reality, when awareness starts to move, two realities start to separate from one another. And this is the second level. This, in order to understand the structure of reality, this is the second level of reality. It's when awareness starts to move, and these two parts of our being now start seeming separated from one another or distinct from one another. One part of our being becomes the light part of our being, and another part becomes the dark part of our being. The light part of our being is the male, the sun, the known, mm, and the young, and the other part of our being is the female, the moon, the unknown. Um, Now, what happens with these two parts is the following: the light part of our being becomes that which knows, that which sees, that which is in permanent contact with the natural reality, with what happens here in the natural reality of our being, in what happens in the unified being, is the one who knows the unified being, the unified instance of our being, is the light side. The dark side instead becomes that which forgets, that which does not know anymore what happens here in the unified instance of our being, in the middle. The dark side becomes that which imagines itself to not know anymore what happens here in the unified version of our being. The dark side means imagining that one does not know anymore who one is. So the dark side is a sort of starts from a sort of play pretend. It starts from an agreement, a will to actually hold itself in the pretendness of not knowing who oneself is. Just playing pretend that one does not know who oneself is. So both of them, when they separate, they only can sustain the separation by individual agreement. So both sides of our being, when they play pretend as if they separate from one another, they take on two different roles. So this separation only like a sort of like play pretend. It's not 100% real. It can only be sustained into existence if these two sides of our being, both of them individually agree to hold up that role and play that role. They both know they are playing a role. The light side is playing a role, the dark side is playing a role. Both of them needs to play their role and needs to agree to play that role. So both of these sides of our being agree to play a role, agree to play a game. The dark side agrees to play like, oh, I don't know the unity of being anymore. I don't know who I am anymore. And this one, the light side, plays as if, oh, I know the unity of being. I remember it. I know what it is. I know who I am. So this is the I am, and this is the I am not. in a way. The feminine is the I am not, and the masculine is the I am. Let's call it from some perspective. Let's say could be said like that. So now you have two versions of the same reality. One version that sees the natural reality here in the middle, it sees the zero as it is, and one that says, no, I'm not seeing it as it is. I'm seeing it as something different, something that is not like that. Um, so one is an affirmation and one is a negation. Um, and one way to understand the dynamic between this light side and the dark side of our being that would help us further understand how both of them together, because what happens at the next level and how both of them together create the next level, which is the projected reality. We need to understand, in order to better understand the relation between them and how at the next level they project the projected reality, the virtual reality, because the virtual reality is not necessarily yet here when these two poles separate. The virtual reality starts at the next level when these two poles meet again, but they create together a projected virtual reality. So it's like you would have is that called a tetrahedron, where you have this shape like this, or a square. Maybe this is why the physical reality is associated with a square. So here in the middle, the first instance of being is just the natural, true, unified reality, the real reality, the absolute reality, the true natural reality of being. You have here the zero. Then the zero splits into these two poles, and then these two poles fabricate a projected reality here, which is on the same axis with the zero. It's another zero, but it's a virtual zero in a way. It's a projected reality. This is the projected reality, and the zero here is the natural reality. And the two poles here that project the projected realities are on the sides. But I will come to this shortly. So, in order to understand the projected reality that exists here on the top, we need to understand these two poles and the relationship between these two poles that create this projected reality here, and how these two poles play together and to create this projected reality here. So the idea is that first we need to understand how these two poles work together, and to understand this and the differences and the relation between them, the best way to understand this is to use a certain example, an analogy. And this example, this analogy would be to imagine a room, to imagine you find yourself in a room, in a house. And this room has a couch, has a, let's say, objects, has a TV, has a bed, perhaps, has chairs, has tables, has different objects existing in the room. And now you're in the room. Now, when the light is on, you can see the objects in the room. You can see the entire room exactly as it is. You can perceive where the table is, where the couch is, where you are, where how your body looks. Um, you can perceive things. You can just know things intrinsically without wanting to know. You're not making any effort to know. You just see them. It's clear as daylight. Nu, Pupi, nu, 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 găsește-te alt loc. Nu, Țuții! Haide, Suții, du-te în altă parte, iubire. Așa. So when the light is on, you can see the objects in the room. You have intrinsic knowledge without any effort. And this is how reality exists in the light pole. So the light pole, the light side of our being, is naturally in tune and naturally sees and naturally knows what happens in the unified version of our being. Now, if we were to be in that room and it would be to... Pupi, dă-te jos, iubire. Hai. If we would be in that room and we would turn the light off, what would happen is that the room would remain the same, nothing would change in the room, the objects wouldn't move, everything would remain permanently the same. It would be just that we don't see the things that are there anymore when we turn the light off. So when we turn the light off, we become unaware, unknowing of the things that exist around us. This is what darkness is. That does not mean that those things stop being there anymore. Pupi, dă-te jos, iubire. Haide, du-te de aici. Pupi, dă-te jos de aici, du-te de aici. Du-te și tu la treaba ta. Jesus Christ. The cat is trying to... Psst. Come in bed, but I don't like to leave it in the bed. Because she comes from the outside and she's dirty. Hai, Pupi, du-te. I think she's hungry. She wants food. Hai, Pupi, du-te de aici, iubire, nu mai scărmăna toate astea! Psst! Suții, du-te de aici, iubire. Du-te. Am să vin în jumătate de oră. Haide, du-te. Nu mai scărmăna ploverul, iubire, gata! Du-te de aici! Psst! Psst! Okay. So when we turn off the light in the room, what happens is that nothing changes in the room. Like the objects continue to remain there in the same places. Everything remains the same way it is. It's just that we become unknowing, unaware of where those things are anymore and what happens in the room anymore. And we become unaware of our body, so we don't see our body anymore. So is that what happens is that turning the light off does not change how things actually are. It just changes how our perception of those things. Just makes us not see those things anymore. But those things continue to exist and to be there. This is the best analogy that I found describe the relationship between light and dark and the natural reality. So the natural reality never changes. It remains permanently the same in the light version and in the dark version. This difference between these two versions of ourselves, these two parts of ourselves, is that in the light version we still are permanently aware and knowing of that natural reality. In the dark side of ourselves, we become unknowing of that natural reality, but that natural reality continues to be the same. So now what happens in the dark side of ourselves when we turn the light off is that we are there in that room, but you not having awareness and knowledge of the objects anymore and of your body anymore. It's like, first of all, you don't necessarily understand the limits of your body anymore because you don't see your body anymore, and you so don't see where you end, where you begin, and so you don't understand the limits of other objects anymore. And now, if you're trying to go into that room, You can bump into things and it can hurt you. This is why pain exists in darkness, because you're bumping into things that you don't know they are there, and it can hurt you. The interaction can hurt you. And this is why in darkness you need to move slowly and you need the main organ of sense in darkness is touch. So you go around and you touch things. You move with your touch mainly. And what happens in darkness is that you start touching objects, touching the things in the room. And in darkness, what happens is that you need a mind, a map, in which you store the things that you understand. So you move through the room and you understand, oh, okay, so the table is to the right, and the table is to the right, and the chair is to the left, and there is a thing which is soft there. It might be a couch, but I don't know. So you're just pulping things in the darkness, and you need a mind, a map in which you need to store your knowledge in darkness. In light, don't need a mind in light. You don't need a map in light because it's always there. You just see it with your eyes all the time. Knowledge is permanent. You don't need a mind in which you store things. This is the difference between light and dark. In darkness, you need a mind because you don't know things, you don't see them intrinsically. So then you have to store your knowledge somewhere in some map, and that map becomes the mind and the algorithm and the software that helps you navigate in darkness. So now you have these two poles. You have the light pole and you have the dark pole. Both share the same reality, but with different qualities. The light sees the natural reality the way it is. The darkness does not see it the way it is, and it tries to discover it and it tries to understand it. Now what happens is that at the second level of reality, where you have these two poles that have separated from this unity, from this true natural reality, this is the first level. The second level is this one. And the third level is the projection. This is why maybe the projection is called the 3D. So in the second level, you have these two poles of reality, which becomes the motor of life itself, the motor of the projected life. Here, they spin and they exist together and create this projection. How they create it is like, how can we explain this? So here, at the first level of reality, in total zero, in total unity, awareness is still. But as we said at the beginning, as it was said at the beginning, when awareness starts to move, these two poles separate from one another. So now awareness here moves constantly. What happens now is that at the second level of reality, awareness is in permanent motion. It's like between these two poles. So it's like making a sequential, is like a awareness is like looking here at the dark pole, then looking fast at the light pole. Looking in the dark one, what happens there? Looking in the light one, what happens there? So awareness is like moving between them. And because of that motion, a projection is projected here in the third level of reality. Let us understand how this happens. The best way to understand this process is through another analogy. And this analogy is, let's imagine we have two pieces of paper. And on these pieces of paper, we are drawing, for example, a certain character. I am drawing a human here on the first pieces of paper that has its hand. I am drawing the human with the hand up, like this. And on the second piece of paper, I am drawing the same human in the same position, but with the hand down. Now imagine that I am holding these two pieces of paper like this in front of my eyes. And now I'm moving my eyes like this between them. Now, if I move my eyes quickly, what will happen is that an animation effect will start to appear. It will appear that the person here drawn on these two sheets of paper moves its hands like this from up and down. If I move my awareness quickly like this, it will appear that the person starts to move its hand. But the person never moves its hand because it's drawn on, it's a 2D character drawn on pieces of paper that have, the character has no life to it. It can't move its hand because it's a drawing on a paper. So this is how, when awareness starts to move between these two poles of ourselves, an animation is created here in the third pole that somehow animates the contents of these two existing in these two poles of our being. And these contents now start to be perceived as being animated, similar to this character that starts to be perceived as moving its hand or walking, if we draw it like walking, or it's an animation that only happens because our awareness is quickly moving and the sensation is occurring inside of our brain, let's say, that that character on the two pieces of paper moves its hand, but that character never moves its hand, never actually moves the hand. The hand just appears in one position and then in another position, but because we look at it quite fast, it appears like there is a continuous process between them. And when awareness moves from the light part of our being to the dark part of our being and does this motion really, really, really quickly, an animation effect is projected here in the third level. And that's the projection, that's the animation, that's the illusory reality, that's the Maya, that's the dream, that's the game, that's the reality that never exists because it's only an animation effect, an illusory effect done by the awareness moving like this. Now, as much as these two sides of our being are united, awareness doesn't need to move much. So the projection existing here is not so solid, so valid, doesn't feel so real. Because awareness does not need to move much. It's like having two pieces of paper that are quite close to one another and you can't move your eyes enough between them to create that animation effect. So you just see the two papers like this. You see the character drawn with its hand up here and the character drawn with its hand down here. And because you can't move your eyes enough, there is no animation effect. So when these two poles of our being are quite close to one another, then the awareness doesn't move that much. And so there is no, the animation effect here is quite only like a hint of animation, only like a hint of projection, just a bit hint of animation. But when these two poles of our being start to separate more and more, awareness starts to move fast, much more between them. And imagine that they separate so much that awareness has to be so quick to move between them. And then the projected reality here becomes extremely real, extremely vivid, extremely valid. So, as much as these two sides of our being, the dark and the light, the female and the male, are separated and distinct from one another, this is how much the projected reality here, the dream, the Maya, the game, the illusion, appears extremely real, extremely valid, extremely immersive. But when these two sides of our being come together, the female and the male, the dark and the light, the yin and the yang, the known and the unknown, they come together, that's when the projection here starts to lose reality, lose solidity, starts to feel more and more unreal. And when they come together finally as one, the projection here stops entirely, and what they become is the unity here in zero, which always was at level one. This is why, if you understand this formula, once this formula is understood, you can look everywhere in almost all the writings that have ever been written about spirituality, about psychology, about how the psyche works, about how nature works, about how the cosmos works. Everything seems unified in this formula. Uh, this is why different approaches to attaining liberation exist. Different approaches to attaining health or well being exist. Because let us remind ourselves one thing. Here, in the unity of being, there is what we could call perfection, perfect health, perfect harmony, naturality in all the ways possible, imaginable. It's just a feeling of complete sense, complete naturality, independent of what that reality might be. It's just a permeating sense of complete naturality, complete understanding, complete sense. So that might mean complete knowledge, complete perfection, complete health, complete well-being, complete understanding, anything that we can imagine of being desirable and good, let's say, is here in the natural, true, real reality of being, which is say the source from which everything else is created. Now, everything that we might perceive as undesirable, unnatural, not making sense, is here in the projected real. Because we know that that is not a reality. We know that that human on the character that moves its hand is not real. It doesn't move its hand. So something within us, like a deep sense, knows that that is an illusion. Just knows. Always. We know that this is an illusion. We can try to fake ourselves. The dark side here, the feminine one, might be strong. And when the feminine is strong inside of us, it overcomes the male side that knows, and then we can get a lot of identification with the projection. This is what the female does. When the female side in us is quite prevalent, it it overshadows the male side, and the reality here, we can get quite identified with the projected reality. But when the male side of in us is overshadows the female side in us, is the reverse happens. It's like the projected reality is seen like a dream. It's like, oh come on, like you can't believe this thing is real. Like, because the male side is the one who knows what the true reality of being is, and the female side is the one who choose to not know, who choose to play the role as if not knowing. Let us remind ourselves that they both play a conscious role. They just play together. They are like the perfect lovers, the perfect dancers, the perfect partners. They are consciously choosing to do this, to play like this. So the female has chosen to play this world out of, let's say, fun. It's not like she's not forsaken or anything to like play as if she the one who doesn't know. On the contrary, like she finds it extremely fun. Like the female enjoys the role at the maximum. It's like bringing all this creativity and potentiality and inventing stuff, and like she's having the most fun. That's it. That's actually one of the things that the female really had fun with this. um, so so when the light part of our being, the male one, overshadows the female, is like you go through reality, but you see reality being so like this cannot be it. Like because you deeply you have having the light side, having the male side deeply let's say, powerfully strong in one's psyche, in one's being, it's like that male side makes things seem like, oh no, like this can't be it. Like this is only a dream. This is only like an illusion. But if you have the female side prevalent in one's being, then this reality here can seem extremely real. It can seem extremely strong and powerful, and you can't believe this is not it, because the female part of our being is the one who plays as if she does not know the reality of being here in zero. So she creates the illusion that this is real. So now if you look at like all like the majority of spiritual teachings, they are trying to tackle this coming to unity from different aspects of this formula. Some of the spiritual teachings try to tackle it from the male side of the formula. They try to say, like, well, detach your attention from your identification with this reality, which means yeah, you just lower your feminine side, which is automatically creating, as I said, this sense of identification and realness with this experience. You just detach from your female side, from your in side, and just focus on the male side. Focus on your knowingness, focus on your light side. And you'll see that this experience here is like a projection, it's a dream, it's not who you are. This is the teachings that teach this identification, letting go. uh, mm, Remembering the self. Remembering the self is done through the light side. And then there are other teachings that say, for example, that one needs to unite both the female with the male side of its being, both the light with the dark, to get to that natural true reality, which I find it more accurate actually. Then there are tactics to only work with the dark. For example, there are people that are trying to get to unity by only using the dark. And the dark is operating with mind, because that's the dark. It's like they are trying to use the mind to understand reality and to get back to unity. Basically, everyone in the projection right now just wants to go back to unity, but they are just trying to use different tools to reach that. Some beings are trying to use more of the light tool, more of the male light side of things, and remember the unity through that knowledge the male still has. The light side still is in tune with the natural, true, real reality of being here in zero. And some other beings are trying to go through the darkness to reach the zero. And they're trying to use the mind because mind only exists in darkness. And they are trying to create mental maps, understandings, intellectual understandings of how things work and how things are can come to be, and what can we do, what's the nature of existence and the existentialism and all these like mentally, intellectually endeavors of understanding reality. This male side comes more from a level of from what from this female mental work endeavor of understanding reality comes more from something that you do. You need to do something. You need to understand. You need to do things. because this is darkness. This darkness, when you're in the dark room, you need to touch things, you need to do things. You're not aware of things just by standing like this. If you stay like this in the dark room, you're not moving, you're not doing anything, you don't know anything is. Darkness means action, means movement. You need to move and touch objects and understand them and understand when they are. Light side means not non-acting, because light side is like, oh, but I know them. It's like I can see everything. I don't need to go and touch the couch to know it's a couch. Like I can see it's a couch. And so light side is non-action, dark side is action. From one perspective, it can be said like that. We could also describe the dark side as non-action, and but yeah, so there is this like, this is how I see this, is that Western practices and Western thought systems are more inclined to work with darkness, and Eastern thought system are more inclined to work with light. If you look like the Buddhists, the Hindus, they are more working with the light side of things. Like, no, don't try to do anything anymore. Just go into the self, which is the light side. They, when they say the self, they refer to the light side. They refer to the light part of our being. Just go and find the self. Just find the self, that light side that already knows unity, and you'll be safe. You'll understand who you are. It's safe. Well, Western thought is like, no, you need to understand the mechanics of reality, the mechanics of creation. You need to go and touch and be in that dark room and touch the objects and make mental maps and understand. And then once you understand how the room is placed, all the objects, then you need to understand how to unite them together, how to make them function. Uh, Basically, what the dark side is trying to do is recreate the light inside of it, but just making this mental map that is enough to simulate how it would be to have the light side that already knows those things. So the Western systems of thought, I see them as trying to work with darkness by default. They are just trying to work with darkness, through darkness, to get to unity. They are trying to devise tools and systems and um, theories and magic. Magic only exists, like, I see magic more related to the like Western traditions, and like magic and occult, and it's anything that implies action, that you need to do something to get to unity. And on the other pole, the light side is like, no man, just chill. just just chill. You are unity. You can't be doing anything to achieve it. But see, this is the main discrepancy that I see here. Because, in my personal opinion, I feel that both of these tools need to come together. I don't feel that the answer is held in any of them individually. I don't think the light side has all the answers, and I don't think the dark side has all the answers either. I don't think that the dark side would ever be able to comprehend unity with all its tools and all its occult systems and all its doing things, and it could do things for eternity and it would not be able to understand unity. But I feel that what the light side also misses is that the light side knows unity. It really knows unity, it knows reality, but the thing is that what I personally see, the barrier of the light side, is that it can't go to unity. It misses the substance of unity itself. It's like, yeah, it knows unity, it knows exactly who one is, it remembers the self, it it knows everything about itself, but it can't be itself. This is the fault of the light side. It's like, yeah, it remembers the self, it knows the self, but it can't just be the self, because it needs to adhere the dark side too, because the dark side is the doing, the being, the one that adds substance to things. So the male needs to bring the female in, the female needs to bring the male in, and together, knowing and unknowing, like substance and substance, let's say, I've heard somebody described it like this and I liked it. They need to come together to create unity, to actually, okay, to actually be who you remember you are. Not only remember that you are unity and know, oh, I know I'm unity. I just know like everything is the natural reality. I just don't need to do anything anymore. No, you need to be that. Like you need to find a way to actually be the higher self, not only know that you're the higher self. like, this is what the light side misses, in my opinion, and the dark side misses. They are in tune with. They are so in tune with, because they have touched those objects in their rooms. So for so much time, they intimately know the couch, man. Like they have touched it, they have tasted it, they have almost become completely intimate with the couch. They know the couch inside out, but they can't see the couch. Like they just don't know how the couch actually looks in reality. They can imagine the colors of the couch and how the couch looks, but it doesn't know the couch. But it's intimately acquainted with the substance of the couch itself. It has touched each texture, it knows the pressures in each point, it has tasted the couch, it has smelled the couch. It's so intimately related to what the couch is in its substance. But it does not know the substance, let's say, of the couch. So the darkness also holds the substance of unity, but it does not hold the knowledge of unity in a way. So these two things need to come together, male and the female, the unknown in the known. And then not only that you know unity, but you are there in your unified being. You are your unified being. Oh, and there I could continue to go to from this from now from this perspective I would continue to go to talk about the real human body and the virtual human body, because there is a real version of the human body. I personally see that a real version of the human body exists, but then it also exists like the virtual version of the human body, the unnatural version, and how this relates to health and illnesses, dysfunctions, and perfect harmony within the body, and perfect knowledge of the body, and perfect unknowledge of the body. Yeah. So I think it's enough for this recording. I actually think it was, I maybe it was a bit too lengthy, but let's see.